highly paying, contributing to the treasury, or rather revenue, that are losing people to government institutions. And that's for us a fundamental change. But beyond that, competition. Take the example of what you have in the telecom industry.
Yes.
Purely because of one simple decision that was taken on Uganda, to liberalize and open up the sectors and Uganda Telecom. Of course, we do not talk about that because we're so comfortable. It's like in the past, so many years ago. But when you go into the hospitality sector, if you look at what's happening in the hotel industry, the dynamism, the competition, the services that have fundamentally improved across sector, it's purely because of that principle. And I can go on so many other sectors. Of course, we have our own debate, which is at times political, when we talk about was Uganda People's Transport Company relevant, was Uganda Transport Company relevant?
At the time, yes.
At the time, yes. But our post-privatization, did we have to privatize? I tend to think that's a political debate,
right.
But I'm convinced that with the numbers of private buses, private operated buses,
yes.
With the Utoda, there's a bit of a problem that Kampala is congested. But for me, Utoda is a direct response of the privatization process that took place in the buses.
Right.
As I speak, Honorable Mukitaale's bigger challenge is to stand up in his constituency and tell those people, vote me because of this. He has to think beyond the ordinary service delivery issues. And for me, that's because of privatization and liberalization. So, yes, we have really gone through the process. We are now at the S bend.
Yes.
We're coming towards the tail end. We're just doing a bit of utilities, finalizing the post-divestiture issues. When you cut out a divestiture, like he has rightly mentioned, the issues in electricity, the issues in railway, they are hanging issues that you have to mop up. And that's what we're pretty doing. A couple of IPOs, initial public offers, that we have to undertake so that we stimulate the capital markets. Those are a little bit of the hanging issues. But there are also those companies that we think probably may not be done now, and we're trying to advise government, probably this is now the new framework. So yes, to answer your question, privatization served its purpose, is coming to the S-bend, but government is becoming a lot more proactive, and that's why we're saying post-privatization, what next? How can we do it? We're not abandoning privatization for public-private partnerships,
yes.
Because privatization has failed. No.
It took us so far.
But that's how far it can go, and we think the new challenges under the new dispensation can be handled by public-private partnerships.
Yes?
What Jim is saying is that we are doing a policy review, and I agree entirely. Policies are not cast in concrete. Policies are a response of challenges of the day and can only deliver up to some level. Given the emerging issues, you have to adjust. But in submitting that is what those who had studied the liberalization as a discipline knew much earlier, that there is a continuum. Right from complete outright privatization through a mixed arrangement where government can still own but outsource management, or state ownership. So it's a whole continuum. So basically what the PPP is bringing about is a middle position, that private sector can come in and complement where the state cannot find the money, but with a strong arm of the state in terms of regulation. And if you look at Uganda, if you talk of the Vision 2035, the only way the NDP can deliver is really to realign, to review, and see what the state can do in partnership with the private sector. And I think now it is very clear. The question of state ownership is no longer at question. That's a foregone conclusion. Now what we need to know is what can government put its little resources to in an event like railways, like energy. The private sector financing is not forthcoming. The state must come in handy using road fund, railway fund. I think we should have as many funds as possible now that the oil money is coming on board. The kind of those funds, if we can use the UDC model, for example, I keep repeating the UDC model because as a student of economics, that's what I've read was the most successful post-independence program in this country. And Now that the economy is having some money and is vibrant, we really need the UDC financing, which financed most of these corporations the governments owned then, including Uganda hotels. And I think tourism is still a sector for this country. I can even remind you of a very wild proposal when the Malaysian people failed to acquire UCB and UCB was being privatized. I made a wild proposal that why can't NSSF, the workers of this country, acquire UCB so that we maintain the national, because by then UCB was in every district. Now, the private sector, the Stanbic, when they came in, they first shut so many branches. They have just gone back because of competition.
Right.
So again, you can see it was a policy problem because NSF has never lacked the money. NSF had the money. Instead, they had a problem of where to invest the money. And even when they found real estate as an area to invest, there was too much politics clouding the good innovation of managers. So managers at NSF have never been given the latitude they need and leverage to really even use the workers' money the way it is. Now, if you look at the oil industry we are going in, you need a refinery, you need a pipeline. I'm going to say Talo, Sinuk, and Plus, Heritage, which parked the other day, Hadman, which left, are going to be responsible for this. We don't want the private sector, even at any moment, to put a country at ransom. If mobile money today decided to cause problem to Ugandans, you don't know how much money peasants, school, those who are reporting to universities and school, students going back to school, the school fees is now going through mobile money. So if you don't regulate such a sector, the country can be put into problems. You see some of these country problems have been caused by very small things. So government must regulate all these activities. Now, if we have been outsourcing, we have been tendering, and you find there is some semblance of a cartel between construction companies. They agree on how much they will charge for roads. They will agree on how much they will. So you need a government arm of a national road constructor, a national arm of a national energy something, a national arm of a national, whether it is army,
to break the cartels.
To break the cartel, so that if they overprice, the government arm can come in.
Right.
So that is very critical, and that's where the debate really should be.
Okay.
Actually, I wholeheartedly agree with the Honorable on that point, and probably what the public-private partnership policy is trying to do is actually to address that. What's going to happen? It's not actually only the cartels, as he has rightly put it, but it's also the projects. He has just mentioned that there's a huge wish list. The question is, do we have to do all these infrastructure developments, all of these projects, by procuring them the way we procure them?
Yes, paying 100%.
Exactly. Do we have to pay 100%? Now, what shortcuts the cartels is the moment they realize that there's no government money which is freely available, then they go away. The moment money is available, they all zero in. They zero in because they know it's there. All you have to do is pay the system, pay somebody, and you will get access to the money. Now that's how they work. Now what we're trying to do, we're saying let's identify these projects. Now that's what we call a pipeline of projects. Let's identify them, and they say these projects are suitable for public-private partnerships. These projects are suitable for traditional procurement, works procurement.
Yes.
These projects probably are suitable for another mode of procurement. Now, the moment we go to the public-private, the PPP projects, then the ballgame shifts. This time around, government is not putting up money. Government is saying, I need a road between Kampala and Entebbe.
Yes.
And Mr. X, I want you to construct that road. You are using your own money, one, to design the road. Two, you're using your own money to construct. You're also using your own money to look for the financing. So design, financing, construction, and operating is your own responsibility. We pay you when the road is functional. Now what you've done, you've shifted the ball game. The cartels have been shortcut because they have nobody to pay, or there's no corruption because they are not using public money. It's your money, you the private sector.
And in addition on that, the moment the concessionaire is responsible for maintenance and tolling the road, he is going to do an extra job.
Exactly.
Because he
On the
would
quality.
want,
Yeah.
he doesn't want loss at maintenance.
Yeah. So you're absolutely right, and I wholeheartedly agree with you. On the issue of UDC, again, you spot on, Honorable. What is happening is government has gone, I don't want to say they are reinventing the UDC, the traditional old UDC. Again, as it were, UDC then, in the 60s, served the purpose. Yes. Absolutely correct. And why did it serve the purpose? Because we're coming out of colonialism. Yes. We had the superpowers who used us as a raw material processing
origination point.
Exactly. And therefore, all the companies that were set up in Uganda were not necessarily supposed to do the final product. They were supposed to process, for example, wood. Here we are. They were supposed to cut our trees into logs and ship them. The wood would be processed elsewhere and furniture shipped back.
Right.
Now, when we got independence, our then leaders thought through UDC and said, why don't we start this thing that is going to add a value to our products so that we actually ship out to final products, and hence the coffee that was processed and the tea that was processed. And that was then right. As we speak now, you may not necessarily go 100% back to the UDC. Why? Because of the risks. We are now living in an environment where there is 100% competition. It's liberalized, it's open. What you're probably going to be seeing is a UDC that is going to act as a fund like it's put. This fund starts up infrastructure. They go into strategic areas which are less funded. They start up a business. They roll it out and hand over to you and the other person who is able to do it best, because they've now aligned it up properly. And then the funds that are available.
Can I fine-tune that? Yeah. If private sector is slow in providing money, say for energy, like now we have a problem, government can put in that money.
Yes.
But there must be an arrangement. What percentage is the private sector going to stake they are going to have?
Yes.
And if they are slow, it can even initially start as a public. Then the management can do a management buyout. They come in as managers. Of course, we know some of these managers don't want to own. I remember the Bukatet story.
Yes.
I don't know Seattle now if they are willing
Bedrock.
to. Some of these folks just want to be franchised. They want to just be managers, and they are good at it. But the best would be best performing managers with proven performance would be the best for a management buyout.
Partner with. Right.
And from there, you give them they could take at least that share which gives them the decision making.
Right.
And then they can float the remaining to public. That would be the best.
Right.
So government would divest sequentially.
Exactly.
In a phase demand, not the way we did it
right
at once.
And that's a very interesting.
That's what been the
Is that something that you probably would have developed a paper on?
Very much. Okay, we've been debating this. Of course, I'm on their side of parliament, which waits for what is cooked from their side. But this debate is
joint kitchen.
We should have a lot of this debate.
All right. Let's hear from the callers, the listeners. This is Spectrum listeners on Radio 1. The state of the Ugandan economy. Can PPP be the solution to the persisting challenges? You can call in now. 0414-348-111, 0312-260-390, 0312-261-390. Spectrum, hello? Hello? Hello?
Thank you for being there, Honorable MP.
Yes, sir, your name? Your name?
Actually, I am calling from King Fahd Plaza.
Yes.
I would support the PP because of the following reason. When you take our local investors, they collide with business people to cheat the government. And another issue I want to disagree with the Honorable Kitaha when he says that government. I think it's an MP. An MP, those are three pillars of the government. So it's part of government. And another issue he talks about Shimon. I think Shimon project was timing, and we have got some results from it. We have a PTC in Manapa district. We have a school in Wakiso, and the work on Shimon is going on. Before, if you compare the school was there, it was not producing. So Shimon's program is okay. Thank you.
All right. Spectrum, hello.
Hello.
Your name, sir?
Yeah, Stephen Mukwaya from Kazi is my name. And my contribution is on the privatization. Now, for example, they did mention on the private sectors constructing roads, for example. Now, if you leave the private sector that there will be nothing like corruption, because they can inflate the prices and they say, you know, these are the costs, and yes, these things were not there. But if the government is there, they will be concerned that really what we are doing is ours. So I think corruption can also be practiced in the private sector rather than also in the government.
Interesting. Spectrum, hello.
Hello.
Your name, sir?
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Yes. I think the PPP idea is a really beautiful one, and I think they should be campaign to promote it. I really like the way the gentleman presented it. One problem we definitely will catch up with in the business environment of Uganda, there are only a few names. Or even if these projects come up, you still have the same names appearing on the same thing, and they're already linked to government, which will, of course, cause people to suspect that this is another way of laundering money or trying to create protected empires for these maybe politicians or patrons. So my suggestion is let it come out as openly as possible. Then the second point is about monopolization. If a project has come up, for example, there is a commitment from the government to kind of protect the project to grow by eliminating the others. Let's say you're going to build another airport. There's a chance that they'll say, okay, if this airport is going to build, let them be only two, only this one and that one. So it will have to cut out all the other opportunities for any further development. Thank you.
Let's take one final caller. Spectrum, hello. Your name, sir? Your name is, okay, Mr. Owere.
First of all, I want to thank Honorable Mukitaale. We have raised so many issues about in fact, I agree with the person who making Uganda a better country to actually identify good investment in this country. But I'm telling you, that's speaking.
Your line is very, very bad. We can hardly hear you, Mr. Owere. We can hardly pick the gist of what you're saying. The line is very, very bad, Mr. Owere. My apologies. Yes, Mr. Mugunga.
Yes, thank you very much. I think the observations from the callers are spot on. I would want to say that I think the Honorable's comment on Shimon was not that they've not been some benefits out of it. He was saying the concept of the project should probably, in the execution and delivery, should have been better. So I think he's not saying that the school that has been done shouldn't have been done. I think that's missing the point. But Stephen, when he says, Stephen Mukwaya, when he says prices may be inflated under private sector as well, the concept of PPPs is actually different. What happens is traditionally when you want to do a road, some government bureaucrats sit in a ministry, they design the road, they cost it, and they would put it there. At times there are leakages. In this case, when you're doing a PPP road, for example a toll road, you actually say, I need a road between here and Entebbe, or Masaka, or Mbara, and that road is going to have, say, capacity of so many vehicles passing through, and I want you to design it, tell me how much it will cost you to build it, and manage it for 50 years. Now, the moment you do that, the private sector, knowing that they are going to be spending their own money for everything along the way until they give you a finished road, they are going to make sure that they do not inflate. Why? Because by the end of the day, they are going to be spending their own money. And you have opened it up to competition. So you can hardly get all of the companies that can potentially construct these roads sitting in a room somewhere in London and saying we inflate. They are competing. So definitely you eliminate that kind of thing. The issue of Paul, some people, same names. I think Paul has a very good point. In an economy like ours, this is a challenge. It's a challenge that not only is it that they are probably potentially going to be the same people, but it's also possible that our businesses are not formally structured. Businessmen who have been successful, apart from those who are successful, have adapted. They hire you, my colleagues who are here, who have studied the things they are trading in, so that they advise their businesses. They manage people downtown and elsewhere who have money in their wardrobes or in their bedrooms and is stored somewhere. They do not tend to want experts to advise in their businesses because they say we've made it. And what you begin to see is after some time they actually collapse along the way. Yes. The other day I was delivering a talk somewhere and asked people to actually give me one company locally founded that has celebrated 50 years in business, and they couldn't come up with it. And I said, this is a quick sample. Even here in the studio here, if you asked to somebody to give you a company that's truly Ugandan, that has 50 years.
50 years is a long time, because you talk about 1962. You could talk about maybe 40 years.
Even if you said 40, even if I said 30, you can hardly name them. And somebody will definitely tell you them advanced and what I'm saying, homegrown, very, very indigenous. And they're not there. The company that I think about every time I talk about this kind of thing is Chapambalasi.
Right.
And frankly speaking,
in the 70s,
Chapambalasi, where are they?
Right.
They exist, but because they've not evolved to catch up with the times. Now that's the missing link. So what Paul is mentioning is that we run the risk of having the same people coming up, same people investing, and we need to address that. And the only way to address that is, one, to do what the Honourable is doing in Parliament now. They're trying to reform the pension, the savings culture. We're growing our banks. Probably we need to create a lot more homegrown banks, and we make sure that they are competitive enough to lend out money. We need to make sure that savings culture grows. We need to work on our capital markets, and so on and so forth. These are solutions. And the moment you have in-house money, then you're going to be able to compete. Then the businessmen who are going to partner with government are going to come through, and they will go somewhere to borrow. When you talk about borrowing for these large sums of projects, we're currently doing a project with the police, Uganda Police.
Yes.
And it's about building 7,300 houses in Kampala. Now, to build those houses, we need private sector to participate. And every time you talk to Ugandans and say, can we get Ugandans working and taking up a lot? And they ask you a question, how big is the lot? You say the lot is about 50 million US to 150 million.
Very few people have that kind.
They all back off. And the reason for that is because they cannot get that money from the local banks. Why? Because the local banks have restrictions because of the adequacies. So my own belief is he's spot on. However, I also think that Ugandans have one gift, and that gift is innovation. For example, the projects we've talked about, saying that they shouldn't come from the private sector, like a airport and so on.
Yes.
Actually, that's the strength of the Ugandans. Get these projects, link up with international people, look beyond Uganda for the funding, and you participate in these projects.
Right. 100%.
Yeah, the ownership of capital is very critical, because one of the leakages this country is having is the sectors which are money minting, like the telecom and the bankers. The telecom are all foreign owned, and you see our few Ugandans who get a percent, like Simba Telecom. You can see what they are getting. So it's we have a challenge, and also bankers, apart from Centenary, which is truly ours.
Yes.
All these banks.
Even Crane Bank is truly ours.
Yeah, Crane is now truly ours. If you can improve on some areas of not selling so much people's acquiring people's properties,
right,
as if they had intentions of acquiring. We have an entrepreneurship challenge. Our moneyed people, if I can use that word, if the vocabulary exists, are not entrepreneurs. I have so many friends with shopping malls down here in town, and so many Ugandans who own very big residences of 300 million plus, but they are sleeping in factories. They are sleeping in some small-scale industry. They are sleeping in cottage industries. Right. If the money in these expensive cars and the money in these shopping malls, the money in concrete and cement in this country was released into small-scale industry, into cottage industries, this country fortune would quadruple.
Right.
And therefore, Ugandans approved to do savings in that industry. How I wish that money. So government, again through PPP, we can find indigenous capital. Indigenous capital, as long as the projects are aligned. Yesterday I was asking the real estate group, why have they failed with bankers to come up with low cost properties? Because Ugandans are paying rent 300, 400. That means a person paying 400 can actually afford a mortgage.
Right.
So why don't we have a mortgage of 25 years like it is in Europe, and somebody knows that instead of renting, I'm going to own. So this kind of innovation is lacking. Okay. Arkwright and National Housing Corporation are still looking for very rich people.
Yes.
So we need a product, we need some innovation, a product for the middle income people.
Okay. Yeah.
And that would really make it. And finally, I would challenge those also who do not are making ransom with government. You find the guys like the ones who are now asking for more land to grow sugarcane. Why don't they make outgrowers shareholders? If the man who owns big land has removed land from Skoll should be giving 10% shares, and this man would give land, and the other smaller growers would be brought on board. Now, these kind of investors who do not want to partner and have a win-win situation with our people are a problem. So we also need to advise them, counsel them, and rehabilitate them in that area, so that we have more public outgrowers, more stake of citizens, and so that, you know, we have suffered this problem. Government thinking only about foreign investors. So we can actually, there are ways we can bring on board local people. Land is an equity. Right. If you have your land, you can come in as a shareholder, and really that's the way to go.
Thank you very much, Honorable Stephen Mukitaale Birahwa, Member of Parliament for Bulisa County, also Chairman of the Committee on the National Economy. Thank you for coming to Spectrum, sir. Honorable Mr. Jim Mugunga, Spokesman of the Privatization Unit, Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development. Thank you for coming to Spectrum. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond Tisto. Spectrum will be back tomorrow. Up next, though, is the news in English. Do stay tuned to Radio 1.
Let's talk about the home of your dreams and how you plan to finance it. Let's discuss money, location, and time frames, and whether you plan to build it or purchase it or renovate it. Let's make it possible for you to get started now, so that you get into your own home sooner rather than later. Let's enable you to borrow against your house, so that you expand and meet all your financial needs. Let's offer you a Stanbic Bank home loan. To find out if you qualify for a home loan, ask at any Stanbic Bank branch today.
Stanbic Bank, moving forward. My friend Richard, he's a true man. He's